Hi, and welcome to Publishing Power. My name is Joellen, and today I have with us Alexa Bigwarfe. Alexa, hello.
Hi, Joellen.
It's so glad to have you today. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much. We are as we were discussing, in fun and exciting times. So I'm glad to be here too. Got nowhere
Exactly.
else to go right now.
Let's hope everybody's sitting inside taking advantage of this. All
That's
right.
right.
Alexa Bigwarfe is a USA Today best-selling author, and we are so honored to have you here. She's also a speaker and a publisher. After turning to writing as a healing method in the wake of the death of her infant daughter, Alexa sought to learn every detail about the publishing industry. So she began to support others who also wanted to share their story through a book. And Alexa is the founder of Write, Publish, Sell, the Cat Biggie Press, Purple Butterfly Press, Chrysalis Press, and the Women in Publishing Summit, which I was just on. I'm so glad that we got to be part of that. She lives in Columbia, South Carolina with her husband, 3 children, and their sweet dog, and she's stuck inside with the corona just like the rest of us. So you
Oh,
can learn
yay.
more at writepublishsell.com. Today I've invited Lexa here to talk to us about book marketing and planning and making a strategy there, because she consults and does a long-term approach to book marketing. So I would really like for you to talk a little bit about how you view this. What is your take on it all?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, when I first started writing, I refer to myself kind of as the accidental writing coach because I had no intention of getting into this. But as I started publishing books that were related to my journey, people came forward and started asking me, everybody knows somebody who wants to write a book. Oh, you're writing a book. You just published it. Oh, you just published another book. How are you doing this? So the business kind of accidentally formed itself. I was spending a lot of time answering questions. So I was like,
Right.
I may as well do something with this. I'm home with my children. We could use some extra income. So off it went. And at the beginning, this was almost a decade ago. So since then we have so many new tools and bells and whistles to help us with us. But at the beginning, we were kind of under the impression that, okay, you write your book and then you publish it and you can grow your audience after that. And since then, I have learned it's quite the opposite. If you want to have a big bang out the door, you really have to start early. And then if you want to see continued growth and movement, you have to continue writing, continue publishing, and most importantly, continue marketing. So that's kind of a short snippet of of how that transition came about. We were publishing books right out the door and realizing, nobody buys the book when there's no audience already built. Let's look at this.
Yeah, exactly. And I understand you work with the authors to build during that pre, during, and then the post-launch marketing strategy, which I
Yes.
think helps with their success. So I know that that's an important part. So kind of explain, why would you focus so far? I mean, once you've launched it, you're done, right? And then you
Ha.
can answer.
Yeah. I saw the sarcastic eyebrow raise there. Yes. Well, but that's what so many people think. So many people have two big misnomers, and that is one, that they don't need to start marketing their book until it's time to publish it, which is just wrong. And then two, well, okay, I like to be one of those people who always says there are exceptions to every single rule. And actually,
Mhm.
my first book was an exception to that rule. It was a book for grieving mothers. I had no intention of ever marketing the book. I just wanted to publish it and get it into the hands of mamas who needed it, right? So, and we
Right.
still don't market that book. We donate it to hospitals and we send it in care packages. So there are the most important thing is to know and understand what you're trying to achieve with your book and set those goals. And if it is large scale sales, which most of us are going for, then you do need to start really early and start building that gradual growth of readers. And when you look at the traditional publishing industry, they start a year and a half to 2 years out with the marketing and send out thousands of copies of the book for free to people to start creating that buzz and that interest around the author. And then, to your point, once the book is published, like I watch this time and time again with authors that we work with, despite the whole old saying of you can lead a horse to water type of thing, like despite us saying, people just assume that because they've written a fantastic book and because they have a small email list or a following on Facebook or whatever, that people are just going to keep buying that book. And it does not happen if you're not continuously out there putting your face, your book, your everything in front of people, book sales will grind to a halt,
Yeah,
period.
exactly. So you talk about having a specific plan for audience growth, and you want to start that pretty early on. Can you tell us, how do we create this plan?
Well, that's a great question. That is, well, it takes a lot of skills, actually, I would like to say, or I will no longer have a job. No, it's really just a matter of really identifying who it is you're trying to get in front of. And this is another piece of the puzzle that a lot of authors just completely struggle with, because we're not trained as authors to know how to market a product. And our book is a product. We are now a product as an author. And we don't come into writing thinking about it that way from a business perspective. And I like to give the example of, if McDonald's knows that they have to continue spending billions of dollars of ads in every year, why would you as a first-time author think that you don't need to also build that presence with the right person? And online with that McDonald's thing, like McDonald's knows they want to market to people who like cheeseburgers. They're not trying to sell chicken nuggets. Well, they have tried to sell chicken nuggets. They do sell chicken nuggets, but their cheeseburger is their staple item. People go to Chick-fil-A for the, or KFC or whatever, right? So your book isn't for everyone, and you have to realize that there is a specific audience. You have to find it, and you have to start coming up with very consistent, strategic ways to grow relationships and get in front of that particular audience and be there and continue to grow, develop. One of the marketing tools for regular products that is true across the board is this idea of 7 to 21 touches. So people need to hear you, see you, get information from you, all of this kind of stuff 7 to 21 times before they believe that it's worth investing in. And, so you have to do a lot of work to make sure that, one, the people who want your book are going to see you, and then to continue to show up in front of that audience, whether it's through blogging or doing fan fiction or showing up on podcasts or whatever it is. It's a whole lot of activity.
It is, and I understand having this strategy is basically to have this long-term approach for the better success. So how do they continue it after it's launched? I mean, you mentioned that they should have a strategy. So kind of walk us through some of the steps I need, what are the different factors we might want to have in place that we can continue? Sure.
Okay, so just to back that up again at the beginning, then before launch, you want to make sure that you've identified that audience, you've identified places that you can be in front of that audience, and you do the work to go through that. You do your launch, everything is great. And I say, take a week off because you're going to be exhausted, and then come back after a week and think, okay, how can I continue to show up and provide value to that audience? This is obviously going to be very dependent on your genre and what you're trying to do. So for someone who writes short, clean novellas, you know that your audience wants content, and it will take them about an hour to read your book. So the best thing you can do to continue marketing from that level is to continue producing content. So just writing and getting it out there and having another book. And if you can't write them fast enough, then you can continue marketing by sharing with them other books that may be of interest to them until you get to the point where you have another book. If you're doing a children's book, it's a very different approach. You know that who is buying a children's book? Generally, it's going to be teachers. It's going to be moms. It's going to be homeschooling moms. It's going to depend on the topic of the nature. It might be specialty stores, like if you're writing a Christmas book. So, all of those things are going to be geared very, very specifically to the person who needs your book. So for children's book, how can you help the person who might be interested in your book? Creating new lesson plans and sharing that with your audience, doing things to make the life of the teacher easier, creating coloring pages and free fun downloads, but constantly creation of content in whatever way makes more sense. I learned not a few years ago that Amazon really likes to see little bursts of activity from time to time after your book is launched. So just doing even like mini relaunches throughout the year ever so often. And there are lots of paid promo lists that, like the Fussy Librarian and Written Word Media, and I mean just oodles of these companies that for a very small price you can you can block promo, basically do a whole bunch of them at one time and send a bunch of people to your book on sale, and that'll create these bursts of activity. I mean, there's lots of ways, but the most important thing, like if you're doing something that there's a podcast group or a blogging group or a big audience like that wants to consume your information, just continuing to show up and to show up with value. So it's not, you don't go on these programs with the intent of saying, hi, I'm Alexa Bigwarfe and I wrote Ditch the Fear and Just Write It, go buy it. It's more like doing this, going in and what can I help your audience with? How can I be of value? How can I provide value? And you have to just continue forever and ever and ever. So find stuff that you enjoy doing because you're going to need to do a lot of it.
Right. And I what I'm hearing is it's a relationship, and you're building it with this audience, and then you have to nurture it and keep it returning, which is, I mean, that's basic marketing, but of course, a lot of authors, they're writers, they're the creatives, they're not necessarily in the marketing. Right. So to think about this in terms of a extra income, if that's your goal, doesn't have to be. If it's not your goal, you don't have to worry about that. But if that is your intent, then you need to make sure that you are building the small contacts and letting them walk in your door to buy something. Because if you don't ask them for the sale, they're never gonna make the purchase. So, and
to continue that line of thought, it's really interesting because what happens when you write and publish a book, I would say, it's stats, they're made up on the spot 90% of the time, right? At least that's what the statistic is on that one, right? But right. I would say that between 90 to 95% of the clients that I work with, and I'm going to use an example of a woman that just published a fiction book through my fiction imprint, Chrysalis Press. She is a writing professional. Like, she coaches other people through entrepreneurship on writing and all this kind of stuff. And she has been published in journals and in short stories and all this stuff, but she'd never published her book yet. So she was like, I need to get my book published. I just need to get it out there. And I had this conversation with her of, if you need to be realistic from the fact that if you don't build your audience, it's going to be a very small launch. I said, but that's okay. If your goal is to use this as your flagship book, as something to have out there to say you're published and all of this stuff, we can do it. So anyway, the point of this is that she went into it even knowing, okay, I'm not doing a big marketing campaign. I don't have big expectations. But almost every single time, what happens is you launch your book and you expect that a miracle is going to happen, that like 1 million people, whether you market it or not, and you get disappointed that people didn't. And so even if you don't think you want to have a big launch before you do your launch and you're okay with it only selling 10 copies or whatever, it never pans out that way. You're always like, oh man, what happened? Why didn't everybody go buy my book? So it's, you do have that goal, but expect that you need to understand if you're not marketing ahead of time, if you're not building the audience, then it is going to be a very tiny little launch.
Right. And I think the interesting part about that, and it's similar to other business models I've seen, is that, you have this much energy you must invest no matter what.
Yeah, right.
And this is a bare minimum to do any launch, no matter what, if it's a big launch or a little launch. Now, anything above that, once you get there, if you make this much work, I mean, it doubles the results. And if you make this work, it compounds. Right. It doesn't double, it doesn't quadruple, it compounds. So really, once you get here, it's well worth that extra, it's like if you're running a half marathon, it's worth making 2 extra laps on the court or whatever you're doing it, because it really is going to make all the difference. And you can't skip that minimum base. That foundation is required. So I really think that it's interesting that people don't get that, and they say, well, it's okay, because maybe it's the magnitude of launching a book wasn't clear. Maybe they didn't understand that this is just going to be so much regardless.
Oh my goodness.
That once you get there, you might as well just hunker down for another week or two. I'm using the word hunker too much because of this corona thing.
I know we're all hunkered down right now, but it really is interesting though, how many people, honest to goodness, just believe that just publishing their book on Amazon is going to be enough.
Right.
And that's going to get them all the readers that they need because they published in a category where everybody's buying books. But, like you might think, well, I just wrote a short little romance book. Those are so hot. Everybody's buying them, but people have to know to find your book.
Right.
And they can't do that if you're not pointing them to where your book is, and you can't point people if you don't have anyone to point to.
Right. It's incredible. So they need to focus on making that plan and understanding it, and they start early. The authors need to focus and take consistent actions. Are there any specific consistent action steps that would help that people can start doing now?
That's a great question. So when I talk about the consistent actions, it comes really down to what you have determined is your plan, basically. So you need to think about where it is that you want to show up and continue to show up. So if you know that your audience responds really well to blogs, or if you know that your audience is reading Entrepreneur or Fast or Inc. or Parenting Today or things like that, like those are the markets that you have to continue to try and create content for, to show up in. If you know that your audience is listening to podcasts, or if you know, like my audience for a long time was stay-at-home moms, so where are they trying to get their information from? So, but what I mean by small consistent steps is that you don't have to be interviewed on a podcast every single day. Like that's kind of unrealistic. But what you should be doing is at least taking 15 to 20 minutes every single day to see if you can find a new one, to see if you can pitch a new one, to see if you can start creating a new blog post to submit to a different place. Those small actions, if you continue to take just small actions towards your goal every single day, if it's growing your Instagram account, then those small consistent actions can be going to follow other authors who are really, really doing well in your genre and following their followers or commenting on their posts, engaging with their posts, building, as you mentioned, the relationships. Relationships are so important. But because a lot of people get so and it is overwhelming. Trust me, there are so many things that need to be done. Like my head is, we just, as you mentioned, did the Women in Publishing Summit, and the amount of time I needed to spend just showing up in places, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, all these places, email, all these places to make sure that people were seeing me. It was, 14 to 16 hours a day of nothing but showing up. Nobody likes to do that, but you can take lots of little itty bitty steps along the way. If I had started that process back in March of last year and started posting on Instagram and growing those relationships and posting on LinkedIn, then I wouldn't have had to spend 14 hours a day trying to make up for it, in that short window. So.
And that's what the launch is. That was your launch of the Women in Publishing Summit, and it takes a minimum amount of engagement, but it also has to have a minimum amount of touches. And unfortunately, some of those touches can't be made up because they are, they have more strength over time than they do. It's kind of like meeting somebody new and you say, we're going to be best friends forever. Well, and I'm to be honest, that's my personality, but it can be a lot for the other person. They're like, I already had a life before you showed up, and I have a full schedule. So it's very hard. But when you can get on there and you have a more regular meeting and a more regular contact, then there's value there. And of course, they're going to think of you first when they're talking to their friends. And if they're referring your book or your services or whatever it is you're doing, or your blog, if you have that fantastic excerpt, then they're going to share it with their friends. It's not going to be something so personal as much as it's something that it's natural for them to include you. It's natural for them to want to be sharing that with everyone, because you're at the forefront of their brain. And to be honest, everyone's fighting for attention online and in the world today. So the neurological overload is just there, and you need to respect that and be the one who isn't sucking and draining, but rather giving them the pleasure.
You are so right on with this topic. I went for a walk with one of my friends who actually happens to be one of my author clients, and we found out that we live in the same neighborhood. And we've become like really good friends, which is amazing. But anyway, we try to walk every day. And we were having this conversation yesterday about like the number of emails. And I was like, on the one hand, like it's a great time to be in the digital space because everyone is looking digital. On the other time, it is awful because everyone is looking digital. And now people I haven't heard from in years are sending me emails about how they can do this course online for free and they can do this and they can do that. And I'm like, if I get one more how I'm responding to help you during the COVID-19 crisis, I'm going to like throw my computer through the window. It's ridiculous. So to your point, like what I've been like, it's giving me anxiety to get all these emails all the time. So I've tried to take it from a different perspective and like, how can we keep calm? What's good? What can we do now? And actually, this is the perfect time to be taking those small, consistent steps, because even if nobody's listening because all of the noise, there's something to be said about having a content backload. So if you're publishing good blogs on your website, one, it gives you something that you can send people to that's not all of this other craziness going on. So whatever you're writing about, and I mean, there are certain topics that are really, really great for right now, like how you deal with stress and anxiety during a stressful and anxious time. You know, what can you do as a mom if you are super stressed and anxious so that your kids don't feel that anxiety or whatever. So you can take advantage of the events of the day, if you will, but you can also be a source of something that's different from what everyone else is doing. One of my former coaches, Tom Morkis, sent out a really great email to his community the other day. And instead of it being like, here's your plan for how I'm going to support you during COVID-19, it was very much like, listen, the world's not over yet. You know, take this time and create. And I was like, oh, thank you for that message, because I am in panic mode over here. Everybody's panicking. And I just needed somebody that I respect to say, to not be trying to profit off of everyone by saying, you know, come join this program that's specially designed for you. It was just like, you know, do the work, do it now, take advantage of the time you have.
Keep writing. That's our message right now. Just keep writing, keep writing.
That's right.
And in the same way for yourself and for us behind the scenes, having, you know, this is an ideal time to really zoom in on your purpose and value-driven goals and make sure that your daily habits match them, and you have the opportunity to create a new rhythm. And it is hard. New rhythms are really difficult. But at the same point, if you consciously choose, then your goal stays the same. And if you said, you know, blogging or creating content or writing your book and having those chapters, if you just focus on that right now, just focus on that little bit, one, it brings a continuity and security to you that really helps you to be present, to be mindful, to know that, you know, my purpose remains the same. I may be surrounded by a natural disaster, but I am going to keep my focus here. And part of that is not just the writing and the creative, but, you know, your family, make sure that you're giving them the time, make sure you're focusing on them. So those things, your health, make sure you're not sitting inside, you know, go outside, garden, do whatever it takes, jump off the roof, I don't care, but do something.
Into a pool, preferably, you know, not or onto a trampoline.
Exactly, but, you know, do something that really, you know, I'm thinking parkour, but do something that helps you to, you know, stay on those 4 areas, you know, and be social, and be social in a positive way. Be social where you're giving and you're caring and you're supporting. And maybe, you know, I know that you and I have both been through tragedy, that one of the kindest gifts I got at that time was somebody who called me and just told me about their day. Their normal, everyday, boring day. And they just let me listen like a normal person. And, you know, they didn't ask me how I was. You know, if the other person's stressed out, don't ask them how they are. Tell them how you're doing. Tell them the good stuff. Share the good things. And I'm not saying sugarcoat it. I'm not saying ignore it. We're all in this, but you don't have to focus on just that. You can focus on something funny, you know, that your kid did or whatever, or what you're focusing on, or some new thing you discovered. Those are exciting. Or a song, you know, I made a playlist and it's great. It wakes me up. It gets going. So I agree with you 100%. So this is the importance of building the engaged and correct audience. It's the importance of having that plan and continuing long after the book is launched, because all of this you can continue to put into your emails. You can rehash it, you can reuse it. So again, I think this is really great. Was there anything you wanted to add to this long-term approach of book marketing?
I think it's really important that you have to start with a solid base. I mean, if you're not confident on who you're trying to get in front of, and if you're not setting out a plan for yourself, you're going to struggle with this all along. And don't be scared by the word plan. Your plan can simply be one. When I work with the authors to develop their plan, we have a worksheet that we go through, and the very first question is, tell me exactly who this book is for, and get very, very specific. It's for the woman who is between 30 and 45, has 2 children, and likes to knit in her spare time, reads books about vampires, and will, shop at Target, like
Exactly.
super specific, because then you can think about that person every time you're doing any marketing, right? Okay, so there's that point. And then you go in and you say, just small, like, how can I make sure that I'm showing up for her? And what am I doing? And make small steps. This week, my goal is to grow my email list. So I'm going to do that by this, and this, and that'll be my focus for the month or whatever. So that's how you have to approach it. And then you just continue to think, okay, a year later, am I still showing up for my lady who likes to knit in her spare time and loves vampires? And
yeah, exactly. And it takes time. I think everyone thinks it's a one-hit wonder, and it's not. You never saw the amount of work it took to get to that point.
Exactly.
And they always had a plan. They always had a vision.
That's right.
Very, very, very rare, if ever, that people suddenly land into something. It's not like digging for gold and you just happen. You had to start digging.
That's
The
exactly
person who
right.
found gold had to start digging at some point.
That's exactly right. You're so right. There's no such thing as an overnight success. It just, very rarely.
Well, this is great. I think people want to learn more. So please, Alexa is available at writepublishsell.com. And I know that you do all kinds of consulting. You have some great online courses, and you have the summit that I encourage everyone to join and to be part of. It's in the back there. We can see it. And follow Alexa on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all those fun places. And we'll put all the connections down here below, but please find out more. It is very important to have somebody who has a long-term plan, who can walk you through it, and that also has walked the walk. And I think that's very important, because there are a lot of gurus out there who claim they can do it, but it really takes the experience to make it through the hard times like we are now, and to know that in the long run, you have a very dedicated habit that's going to eventually achieve the success that you're looking for. So I encourage everyone to keep writing. And Alexa, thank you so much for coming today.
This was such a great conversation. I really appreciate you having me in there, and your calm demeanor is just lovely. So thank you for for giving me that space when everyone else is going wacky. But I love it. Keep writing.
Oh, keep writing. Just do that. And if you just have a mantra that, I'm just going to keep writing, just keep breathing, just keep being, and that's enough. That's enough for today.
Right.
All
Thank
right.
you
Well,
so
thank
much.
you. It was great having you.
Thanks.